Yes, welcome folks, and today's video is possibly our most requested video ever. It's time for Dice Masters Team Building 101 with the Ministry of Dice. Yes, okay then, thanks for sticking around. And as I said in the intro there, this is Dice Masters Team Building 101 with the Ministry of Dice. Although specifically Chris right now, we'll do some more content with Andy down the line. And by the end of this video, you will have greater insight into the process that I like to follow and the things that I like to think about when it comes to building a team. That's a process that I have developed over a number of years. I've been in the community for a long time now. I've played competitively. I've spoken to competitive players. I've interviewed competitive players to build a kind of list of things to think about, lists of things to consider when building teams. And so from my own experience and from those experiences of other really kind of qualified Dice Masters players, I've kind of built this sort of team building process. Now, why now? Why are we doing it now? Well, there's a couple of reasons. The first is that we get asked a lot. I mean, an awful lot, both on the podcast and here on the YouTube channel, to do more team building related content. And we've always kind of put it on the back burner and said, oh yeah, we'll get round to it. But of late, we've had more people come out the woodwork asking for more stuff in this area. There are newer players coming into the community. They're listening to the podcast. Andy and I have been talking a lot about building teams because we've been playing around with formats and doing stuff on stream and talking about the teams that we build. And we've just had people say, these Dice Masters fundamentals that you keep mentioning, can you tell us more about that? So there's that, really, that's just kind of brought it back to the forefront and made me go, right, do you know what? Let's get it done. And if I'm going to do it, I might as well start at the beginning and start with the basics, start with the 101. But also, I think the time is right. We're only a couple of months away from the new year. There are new releases scheduled that we've got no reason to think aren't going to come just yet. Maybe, I don't know. But we're optimistic, Andy and I, about next year. And we certainly think it next summer, when the Fantastic Four versus Galactus box set arrives, that there's an opportunity for us to support and help and guide a community of new players that we hope it will attract. So the timing's right, really, to start doing content of this nature and start building a bit of a library of this stuff, because we want to do our part to helping bring on board those new players, attracting those new players, and making their welcome into the game much more smooth. So I'm going to share my process, share the kind of things that I think about step by step, and then by the end of this video, you will hopefully have some thoughts and ideas to help you get started with your own team building. So yeah, there we go. Let's crack on and let me move to the split screen to share my stuff. Well, here we are then, going full school teacher mode. I've used the chalkboard and chalk kind of theme motif to the visuals there that I've used in some earlier videos because it's Team Building 101 and that just kind of makes sense to me. But let's just imagine for a moment, or let's speak to those who are stepping into this brand fresh new for the very first time. Welcome. Nice to have you here. You'll love it. It's a great game. But let's just get started for you right at the beginning with some of the core basics, just so that you've got the kind of picture of context of what I'm referring to when I talk about teams. So most people play a full Dice Masters team that is 8 character and action cards, 2 basic action cards, and then a maximum of 20 dice that can be distributed across your team. Character cards, pretty much what they say on the tin. These are the characters, the cards that represent characters. Action cards are the ones that are on your team. They are not basic action cards, they're action cards and represent things like equipment, vehicles, tools that they've made cards around. And then you have basic action cards, which are the communal action cards that are available to both players. Your maximum of 20 dice are distributed through your 8 core character and action cards on the team. The basic actions have their own dice, which are the ones with the kind of bursty faces on them. There's a picture on screen right now. And your cards will all have a max die count listed on them that will highlight to you what the maximum amount of dice is that character or action can possess, bearing in mind that you can't exceed the maximum of 20 anyway. So you've got 20 dice, you can distribute them throughout your team, but on an individual character, you can't exceed their maxed die count. So your basic team, when you're rooking up to play, will have 10 cards in total, your 8 characters and actions, and your 2 basic actions, and then anywhere up to a maximum of 20 dice distributed across your core team. Okay, so everyone's now on the same page as to what a standard Dice Masters team should look like. Obviously, the next step is to now start making decisions as to what cards are going to fill all those slots that I've just described and how you're going to distribute your dice. And the first thing I generally think about, not in every instance, but largely speaking, the first thing I think about is how am I going to win the game? What is my team going to do that's going to deal 20 points of damage to my opponent, take them down to 0 life, and win me the game? So my step 1 is to find the card or card combo that I'm choosing to use to deliver that damage. Now, I have a preference towards direct damage, so I like stuff that does pingy damage, deal 1 damage, deal X amount of damage to opponent to reduce their damage down. But there's obviously also combat damage, and then in both those kind of 2 pots, there's many other kind of subcategories as well. Like in combat damage, you can overcrush your opponent, you can look at unblockable cards that can go through and can't be defended, you can look at board clear, a 1-turn kill, clear everything off the other side of the board and charge through with a full 20 points of attack stats. You can overwhelm your opponent with kind of aggro and having more characters than them. There's loads of different ways, but the first thing you need to do is decide, how am I going to win this game? So step 1, folks, decide, find the card or the card combo that is going to win you the game. You need to deliver 20 points of damage. Okay, so step 2, you've got yourself a card or a few cards that make up a combo that's going to give you 20 points of damage to deliver to your opponent. Next step, you need to be able to buy the dice from those cards to use them. There's no point having an amazing, exceptional win condition if you never roll enough energy to be able to buy the dice you need off those cards, particularly if it's a multi-card combo. So we talk a lot in the community about ramp and churn, and this is generally something that I like to think about like as part 2. Once I've got a picture of my win condition, that then is giving me a sense of how much stuff I'm going to buy, how many dice I'm going to require to pull it off, how many cards are making up the combo, is it a single card win condition, or is there a couple of cards involved? And so that then informs how much I'm going to want to build my purchasing power, making sure I'm rolling energy. And in the community, we refer to this as ramp and churn, which is 2 ideas really. Ramp is about generating that purchasing power, and then churn is about moving your dice through your dice cycle so that what you have just bought comes out the bag and gets rolled, so it's there in the field ready to be used. So when it comes to building your team, your next step is to be looking at cards that let you draw and roll extra dice, that let you draw and put dice in your prep area ready to roll next turn, or that move dice from your use pile into your prep area, or that can KO things and put them in your prep area for next turn, or gives you discounts on the stuff that you're trying to purchase. Anything that's going to help your purchasing power, increase your opportunities to buy and use the dice that you've now established is going to be the way you win the game. Now, you might want to revisit this stage a bit later on in the team building process, because some of the subsequent sort of stages of team building might introduce an added twist that's making you think, oh, actually, I need to go back and reconfigure that in a different way. And different types of ramping up, different types of ways of generating more energy may be more or less suitable for your team, depending on what you're putting together. Now, that's a whole area with a full 30-minute video jobby on it in its own right. But hopefully, as you play around more and experiment more, you'll get a sense for that from your own experience. But watch this space, because I'll do some, let me know in the comments below if you want me to do some more stuff on that subject there. So step 2, figure out how you're going to be able to buy your dice that are going to let you win. So your team is now starting to take shape. You will have somewhere between 2 and 5 card slots allocated at this point. You'll have a card or a card combo that's going to win you the game. You'll have a card or a card combo that's going to give you the ramp purchase power and going to give you the churn power so that you can buy that win condition and then get it through your dice cycle and out into the field doing its thing. The next step, for me, generally, because I'm a control player at heart, is I think about how I support and protect my win. Now, this is really the point that may be more challenging to newer players, because you've got to sort of play a lot and read a lot of cards to get a sense of what those potential risks are. I've been playing the game for a long time, so what the risks are for the win condition to me kind of come a bit easier. So you might have to do a bit of experimenting, or if you've been a gamer and you've come to us from another game, maybe think about similar sort of parallel mechanics from other games that you've played. But I want to be putting cards now on my team that are going to stop my opponent from stopping me. There's going to run interference on their interference, and allow my win condition to go through unmolested, unfiddled around with, so that I can still deliver that damage. I'll give you an example to bring it to life. If you're a newer player, you may be less familiar with this, but combat players who like to deliver their win through combat damage are always on the lookout for a set of globals that are largely referred to as pushback globals. Take a look on the Dice Coalition team builder at distraction, blink transmutation, and static field. They're the three. Oh, and Kate Bishop. There's a Kate Bishop as well, where you can pay a mask and then you can remove an attacking character from the attack zone and send it back to the field zone and cancel the attack. So if I'm a combat player and I'm trying to deliver my win through, let's say, a game text that's unblockable, that's not a global I want to be seeing on the other side of the table. That's going to get in the way of my win. So my next slot then is to look for ways of cancelling global use, or preventing my characters from being targeted by globals, or at the very least are going to tax my opponent some extra cost, or make them lose a life, or ping them for a bit of damage, or make them have to pay more to use that global to prevent my attack. So your next sort of couple of slots, or certainly your next one slot at the very least, is looking for ways to support and protect your win. Now, what you often find is people focus on removal game effects at this point. That your support and protection is removal effects. So things, characters or actions that get rid of dice out of the field. So if you've got a character that your opponent has out in their field zone that's running interference on your win condition, you use a removal game effect to get rid of it, to kill it before you need to do your thing. So you'll often see removal solutions as a kind of one-size-fits-all win-con protector appearing in teams. So take a look at things that deal damage when they're fielded. Take a look at things that intimidate and can remove stuff out the field. Take a look at globals like Magic Missile that can do ping damage and remove stuff. One of the ways that is often regularly used to support and protect win conditions is removal options, or stuff that blanks cards. Typhoid Mary, Drax, that prevents stuff from being bought and fielded, Shriek, the classic Shriek Sonic Beam that everybody used to use, Dwarf Wizard. Take a look at these on the Dice Coalition team builder, because removal and blanking is a very classic kind of one-size-fits-all way of doing it. But if your win condition has a very specific threat, then you can prepare for that. Direct damage players, for example, a lot of direct damage game texts are delivered by a when fielded trigger. So when a dice is fielded, the direct damage goes off. So they're always on the lookout for cards with game effects that stop when fielded and look to try and remove that character from your opponent's field zone before you do the when fielded. So the only way to get a sense of this, the only way to get good at team building around this, is to play lots of games, learn what those risks are, learn what type of dice hit the field that can run interference on your win condition. But then as you play more and you're team building more, you'll find more options and more ideas to fill these card slots that are going to support and protect your win condition. Okay, so by this point, you should have a couple of slots left on your team. And what I like to think about at this point is, how am I going to stop my opponent from winning? I was just talking about when your opponent's got stuff that stops you from winning. Well, do you know what? We should think about that too. What are we going to put on our team that's going to stop them from winning? Now, I've played a lot, I still play a lot, I build a lot of teams, I play a lot of teams, against a lot of teams. So I've sort of developed a sense of the type of things that people like to use to win. I've got a good feel for the meta sometimes. You, as a new player, will only really get that through experience or by engaging with the community and finding out what's out and about. But in time, you'll get a good sense of what's popular and how people go about winning. And in turn, you can then take that knowledge and put it into this function of your team and start using card slots to really interfere and stop your opponent from winning. Now, you might find that the one-size-fits-all control that I was just talked about in the last section is a good fit for you here as well. Stuff that blanks, stuff that prevents purchase and fielding, stuff that kills, killer cards that KOs dice, intimidators. They might be suitable in this function too. So you might just double up, or just have the one and just use it flexibly to suit your needs as and when things are coming along. But definitely put some thought into how you are going to stop your opponent from winning. Are there specific win conditions that are going to be turning up, that you've got a sense, little Bobby over there or little Jane over there keep bringing the same type of stuff every week. So, explore your control cards, explore your prevention cards, and think about combos and strategies or single card solutions that are going to stop your opponent from winning. Or globals. Don't forget the globals. Your team is coming pretty close to full by now, I imagine. You've only got maybe 1-2 slots left. You're wavering over the basic actions. We'll talk about them a bit more in a second. But one thing to bear in mind is, and this is certainly something that competitive players who do really well often do, less so me, but them, is to consider, do I need a pivot? And by that, I'm referring to a plan B win condition. Can I pivot my direction of my team and try and win the game in a different way? Perhaps the interference that your opponent's running on your main win condition is just too much. You can't get around it. It's getting difficult to handle. Or something's gone wrong with your ramp solution, so you just can't get to buying the dice that you need. Sometimes, if you've got slots left over, you can maybe find a nice synergy that works with the rest of the team that's going to give you an alternative way of winning. Now, a great example of this is Arj O'Neill's World Championship team from a couple of years back. Arj was playing a classic combo well known to Dice Masters lifers called the Collector Nobby combo. Now, what that does is it uses a when fielded direct damage effect called Norman Osborn, Don't Call Me Nobby, that does a point of damage to your opponent for every villain in the field, both their side and your side. That would be paired up with a Danger Room dice called, Flamethrowers, Knives, and something else. I'll put it on the screen. And then using the Collector, the rare Collector, Tanlir Tivan, who lets you field dice for cheap at a discount in a kind of janky way. Again, I'll put it up on the screen. So the idea is fire off Danger Room, make every dice in the field a villain, then field the Norman Osborn, who deals damage for every villain in the field, and, just do that 2 or 3 times and win the game. However, there's lots of when fielded hate. There's lots of control out there that prevents effects that happen and trigger when a dice is fielded. So Arj placed on his team this Black Canary and this Kree Captain to give him some muscle, to give him a combat damage solution that he could switch to if he needed to, and still benefit from the power of the Danger Room making everything villains, because that Kree Captain gets bigger and that Black Canary does what she does. So think about whether if you've got slots remaining, this little bit of space that you're going to squeeze something into, is there an opportunity for a pivot? Can you put an alternative plan B win condition in the mix? I wanted to take a moment at this point to talk about basic actions and globals and the idea of who benefits most from them. We have to remember when team building that basic actions and globals are a communal part of the game. Your opponent can buy your basic action dice, they can use globals that are on your team cards. And so think very carefully about the function, which part of the previous criteria they are fulfilling for you, and whether you're giving your opponent too much help, whether they can benefit from them just as much as you, if not more. Experienced competitive players will talk a great deal. I've heard loads of winners and champs talk about this idea that you have to be able to use them better than your opponent and benefit more from them than your opponent can. So if you're bringing these communal elements, you have to be on top of your game and make sure that they help you more than they help them. This is a challenge. I've made this mistake many times. I'll be playing Andy and I'll be like, he's doing my head in, he's using my global loads, and it's annoying. Stop using my global as much. I've obviously given you something really, really helpful there. And is it helping me enough that I'm, it's balanced in my favour? I'm not sure that it is. I also made a video a number of months back talking about the challenges that I face when choosing basic actions, because I find that really tough sometimes. The communal element when it comes to the team building can be really challenging. you certainly don't want to be, or you have to be very careful about if your win condition involves a basic action, for example, or some of your control is a global that your opponent might be able to use against you. So a little note on basic actions and globals: through exposing yourself to more play, through getting more games in, you'll get a sense of this more and more increasingly as you roll more dice and win more games and lose more games. But think very carefully about the basic actions and the globals as a communal element of the game. Who benefits? It better be you, Well, you might be sitting there thinking, okay, that's a lot of talk about the cards that go on the team, Chris, but what about the dice? Can you tell us a little bit about team building and how I distribute my 20 maximum dice? And as a general rule of thumb, I do this, and I know a lot of other players do. You want a higher proportion of dice on the lower purchase cost characters and actions, the ones that you're likely to buy multiples of or more frequently in a game, and you want a lower proportion of your dice on the higher cost characters that you'll be buying less of, or characters that are just in your team for the globals and you just need 1 dice on them, because they're in the team and you have to have a minimum of 1 dice on. Did I say that earlier? I possibly didn't. Don't forget you need 1 dice on a character card. So that's the general rule of thumb. So your 1, 2, 3 cost stuff will have a higher number of dice, even up to the max die 4 or 5 that you'll find, and you'll have maybe 1 or 2 on your higher cost characters. There are some shades of grey in there. You might have a character that's a good discounter, that's making those higher cost characters a little bit easier to reach for, and because your higher cost character is your win condition or a really important part of your combo, you might put some extra dice there. There is a lot of flexibility. 20 maximum dice is a lot, and you find that most players, myself included, very rarely buy a full set of 20 dice off a team. I think at most I generally buy 6, 8 in a game, unless I'm having a real big slugfest with Andy. So your dice distribution, as a general rule, to get you started in your team building 101 state: low purchase cost characters and actions, higher dice count; higher purchase cost characters or characters that are there just for the global, lower dice count, unless you can buy them, unless you've really figured out your purchase ramp and churn. So yeah, very straightforward rule to get started. And then as you play more, there's me banging that drum again, as you play more and you get more experience, you'll kind of figure out how you can play around a little bit more flexibly within that dice distribution space. But as I say, very rare you'll ever need all 20 anyway. Very rare. I have inevitably missed something out there. Those are just the kind of basics, the fundamentals that I operate by. But if there's any experienced players out there who've watched this video and stuck it out, then please do jump in the comments below, throw in some thoughts and ideas that I may have missed out to help out new players who've happened across this. The more the merrier in terms of advice and guidance. But that wraps up my Dice Masters Team Building 101. If you've enjoyed what you've seen today, if you found this helpful, please do give us a thumbs up and be sure to subscribe to the channel. We're very, we're creeping up on 350, so help us with that push and make a long-haired, beardy Mancunian super happy by breaking 350. If you want more content of this nature, also just drop it in the comments below or get in touch with us. But in the meantime, I've been Chris, and you'll find me on a Ministry of Dice podcast over at the BritRoller6.com website or here on YouTube again sometime soon. Thanks for watching, folks.